Good morning, everybody. This is K. Balakrishna working as a lecturer in many of the institutions. Presently, I would like to speak about a particular subject which is called as uh, trade theories, international trade theories. First of all, what do you mean by a trade? The process of exchanging of goods is called as trade. That is, buying and selling together can be called as trade. If it is an international trade, it is a process of exporting and importing of the goods is called as an international trade. There are many rules and regulations to be followed while following an international trade. In the international trade, export is followed by many procedures and imports is followed by many procedures. And many scientists have studied the international trade and they have postulated a number of theories. We are now going to hear about all these theories that goes on nowadays. Now I'll be sharing you the screen which indicates what are all the various trade theories discussed until now. What is a trade? The process of transacting the goods is called as a trade. And what is international trade? The process of exchanging of the goods between two different countries is called as an international trade. Now, what do you mean by a trade theory? A trade theory indicates rules, regulations, and other details which are required for furnishing the international trade. First trade theory is called as mercantilism. Mercantilism is a theory which was initiated by Mr. Thomas Mun. Mr. Thomas Mun is the person who has first initiated the transaction, which is called as initiated the trade theory, which is called as mercantilism. He stated that the country's worth depends upon the gold and silver holdings which the country has. If the country has high gold and silver earnings, reserves, then the country is said to be rich. And if the country possesses less amount of gold and silver earnings, then it is called as a poor country. He was of opinion that as the exports increase, the revenue for the country increases and the trade flourishes. He also of opinion that every country must try to minimize the imports. I'm not speaking about imports of technical or technological goods or industrial designs, but I'm speaking about minimizing the imports. Imports in the sense these are the goods which are being taken from the foreign countries to the domestic countries. Okay, what do you mean by export? The process of transferring goods from home country to the host country is called as export. From host country to the home country is called as import. Any country must try to export the goods and prevent the imports of the goods, because exports increase the foreign exchange for the country, and imports is an expenditure for the country. The reason itself is also said about the reasons. The reason is simple. You pay when you are importing and you get while you are exporting. These are the reasons why he has rejected the imports and he wants the exports to be taken place. Second theory is called as absolute advantage theory. Absolute advantage means there is no other competitor for the advantage of the country. It was proposed by Adam Smith in the year 1776. It said that every country has a specific advantage. For example, India has an advantage in producing large number of variety of products, and Japan has a technological advantage, and US has advantage in some other areas. China has an advantage in terms of price. In this way, each country has its own absolute advantage, and this absolute advantage cannot be imitated. Advantage of any country may be in terms of increasing the quality or lowering the prices. First and the foremost is if there are two countries which are entirely different in the products they produce, they are said to be having absolute advantage. China in terms of price, Japan in terms of technology. These have gained absolute advantage in those terms. Third theory is called as comparative advantage. People buy Indian goods when compared to the Chinese goods because of the quality. People buy Japanese goods when compared to India because of technology. In this way, one country has a fair advantage over the other. Comparative advantage in the sense it differs from the absolute advantage and in one way. That is, in comparative advantage, there can be two or more countries compared together in gaining some advantage. But in case of absolute advantage, there will be no sort of comparison among the countries. Next, Hexter-Ohlin theory. Hexter-Ohlin theory is a combination of both absolute as well as comparative trade theories. He said that it is the choice of products that decides which country they wanted to export. For example, nowadays the world is after India for searching for vaccines, vaccination, and other procedures. Next, India is after the world for searching about the health equipment and other aspects. In this way, Oaklin stated that if the supply of products grows greater than the demand, the price falls. The demand and supply both conditions must be in a equilibrium state. Then the demand will be unaltered. If the supply is more than the demand, prices fall. If the demand is more than the supply, then automatically the prices escalate. These are the two postulates stated by him. He also stated that exports usually takes place when the demand is more than supply, and imports usually takes place when there is a higher amount of demand in the foreign markets. Next, there is also one theory which is called as product life cycle theory. It is stated in 1970s by Raymond Vernon. He clearly stated that the demand for newly created products grows. In the sense, as the demand for the newly created products grows, automatically the country gets huge amount of foreign exchange by exporting the goods to the other countries. Global strategic rivalry theory. It was postulated in the year 1980s, and it is postulated by Calvin Lancaster and Paul Krugman. He stated simply that a new firm depends upon large number of factors to prevent the barriers to succeed. Every firm gets rivalry from the competitors, and this theory explains how this rivalry can be minimized and how the exports can be maximized by many countries. National competitive advantage theme. Before going to this, we have to know what do you mean by competitive advantage. The advantage the country has to face the competition one compared to the other is called as competitive advantage theory. Competitive advantage theory was postulated by Michael Porter in 1990s. It stated simply that there are many countries which have high amount of available. There are many countries which are having highest amount of availability of resources in the local market, and based upon the availability, their prices will also be high. With the here, some countries have advantage when with the available resources, and some countries have advantage with the prices. For example, the companies like China have advantage in terms of prices, and the countries like India have a advantage in terms of resources. In the sense, each country has an advantage, and this advantage helps them to face the competition. So this advantage helps the companies to face the competition with heavy hands and lead themselves as most successful companies when compared countries when compared to the others. Another thing to be noted is every company must also track the change in the demand and adjust the demand based along with the supplies. If the demand is high, the supplier dependency must be increased and suppliers supply must be uninterrupted. These are some of the trade theories which I have discussed. One having a comparative advantage, one having an absolute advantage, one having a Becklin-Ohlin theory, and the other being the competitive advantage theory. In this way, each theory has some explains about the absolute advantage, competitive advantage, comparative advantage, as well as many other factors. Whatever it may be, the countries with an absolute advantage has to take the advantage of their competitive abilities, and the companies with the absolute advantage must prevent the worldwide imitation, and the companies uh, mm, with comparative advantage must have an upper hand when compared to the others. Thank you. This is a small explanation regarding the international trade theories. This international trade theories helps to flourish the international trade by all means.